But at the end of the day, like the criteria is still the criteria. And so it's important for people to remember that studying the criteria and people on that top professional level from each federation is the really only way we can try to, have something to use by as coaches to go by. Is just like the criteria they write on paper, as well as like the top level winner of that year.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Bro to Pro podcast, where we hope to help you reach your full potential, whether that be inside or outside the gym. I'm your main host, Jeremy So, self-proclaimed gym bro, and today I'm sharing the stage with my co-host Nicole Tan, IFBB Pro.
What's going on, guys? We are back from our not so long, but like our season of competitions, and we even flew over to Sydney for the ICN Nationals. So we got a topic today that is somewhat related to all of that.
Yep, so today we are gonna discuss the competition season, I guess we want to put it that way. It happens 2 times a year. We, myself and Nicole and other coaches and all coaches out there are very busy during this time. I think we invest a lot of time into this. Our clients invest a lot of effort and time into their preps, and it's a very stressful and emotional roller coaster of a journey as we go through, try to, bring our clients to the best of their ability. So we do apologize that we haven't been on, like myself and Nicole have not been on a podcast together for a while. So if you guys do enjoy this, make sure to feel free to ask us questions on our Instagram or YouTube, or DM us like questions you want us to go through or anything like that. We are more than welcome to take all questions. We want to try to bring this back a little bit more consistently, but we want questions. We want to answer the questions that our listeners listen, like when you guys listen to what we put out, we want you guys to input some questions that you want us to go over. It could be a topic we've already discussed, and we're more than happy to even discuss the same topics again, maybe in more detail.
Yeah, definitely.
Sweet. So let's get right to it, right? So we had the competitions. There's a lot of federations going on. The ones we kind of prep clients for are the ICN. I compete naturally. If you guys do not already know that, it's one of the biggest natural shows in Australia. Then we've also got the IFBB,
the Pro League, yeah.
The Pro League, and we've also got the YNF, which is a new federation as well.
Yeah. Over East, I also prep clients for the INBA, which is somewhat similar to ICN, and the NBA as well. So a lot of different federations, a lot of different criterias, a lot of different states, sometimes different countries. I also prep clients in the IFBB New Zealand before. And there's quite a lot of differences when it comes to the different federations. Even me competing as a professional on the pro circuit, there's a lot of differences with the judging and criterias, even just in different countries as well. So
once again, it is our own personal assessment. So do not take it too hard or anything like that. Once again, always listen to your coach, and your coach will know best.
Yeah, everything we say today is just our opinion from our own experiences. Things may change from year to year, and things have changed from year to year a lot of times. So we just want the sport to continue evolving and growing and just heading in the right direction. And we both have a huge passion for this sport. Obviously, I personally compete in this sport as well. And we just want to share our opinion today.
So I guess we'll start off with judging the divisions. I guess, judging divisions is a interesting topic, I guess, because every class, every federation can have those slight nuances and differences that I think people do miss. And I think they think whatever. I think the biggest thing that happens a lot is, as a coach, is clients not placing the way they want to. And the judges assuming that, it may be, this is the look they're going for this year or this season. But I think, being as experienced as we are, we do find that, that we can argue that, okay, we can see why they've chosen this, and I think that having that open mindset is super important. Being a coach and being a client is that, we've got to adjust it accordingly to each federation.
The criteria is almost always exactly the same year after year. However, there's a lot of differences in, who shows up on the day, who's sitting on the panel. There's so many other differences that we can't really account and predict. However, at the end of the day, what's written on paper as the criteria, it has always been the same. Every single division has their set look that they're going for, and at the end of the day, it's the judge's job to just pick the best they can on that day. And sometimes it may look very different from the year prior or the following year, but at the end of the day, like, the criteria is still the criteria. And so it's important for people to remember that studying the criteria and people on that top professional level from each federation is the really only way we can try to, have something to use by as coaches to go by. Is just like the criteria they write on paper, as well as like the top level winner of that year.
Yeah, and it's so often, like, I feel like I'm so repetitive every time we talk about why they chose this certain look, and I'm like, I could see why they could choose that look, and I think that's something that it comes with experience. You always get, like, your friends or family say, you looked amazing, you should have won. And you get other people judging other people's physiques, or they chose that, like, this is the look they're going for. And I'm just like, well, like, there's a lot of reasons, and there's a lot of different variables that people don't see that play a role in how well you do.
I think the first thing that people have to remember is, unless you're there watching it in person, you can't really make a proper judgment call or anything, because from the live stream, photos, people's Instagrams, it's so different from real life. And we've watched so many shows in real life now that, like, we can make proper, I guess, comments because we did watch it in person. But a lot of times people think they know everything and they're just being a judge in their own behind their computer screen when they haven't actually watched it in real life to know.
Yeah, and even when you watch it in real life, they don't even know. Like, I mean, like, it's so hard to really pinpoint exactly, but I think having an open mind is the first step, I think, in truly understanding the federations and the individual divisions and criterias, because that's what we do as coaches. I think we, if you ask me from my very first show I watched to, like, now, I definitely feel like I'm way more experienced in how they choose certain criteria for each class and federation. And I could be completely wrong as well. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm very transparent with my clients. I'll be like, you know what, I think this is what we need to bring, and that's what we focus on, and we can really break it down to, like, every single detail. So you guys, the listeners, if you are coaches or clients, you truly understand, like, how many variables there are that come with each criteria or federation. So let's start. I think, obviously the most controversial, I think, the class would definitely be bikini for all federations. I think this is probably the hardest one out of the lot to really determine, like, who's the winner for the day.
I think when the criteria is set that, like, you can't be the most muscular, you can't be the most shredded, and you're going for that in-between kind of look, it gives a lot of room for different opinions, different speculations, and things to go wrong, or, like, things to be overlooked from time to time, because we're going for that, like, perfect in-between look. And it does vary, obviously, from federation to federation, but at the end of the day, compared to a more straightforward class such as bodybuilding, when it comes to the one where it requires the least level of muscularity and the least level of conditioning, there leaves, like, a lot of room, again, like, for errors and inconsistencies.
Yeah, and I think I still believe that the few steps that you have to look at, especially when competing, is like, we can go through them today. And I want to start, obviously, with, we start with bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is a lot more simple, right? So we kind of understand, everyone understands the biggest, most leanest guy, proportionate guy, best posing guy is probably going to win. Like, in bodybuilding, it's pretty straightforward. It's not really subjective, I feel, because, if the guy is phenomenal, like, proportions and size and fullness and hardness and dryness and everything, they're gonna win. Yeah. It doesn't matter what anyone says, they're gonna win.
Aim to be the best and bring the best and just max everything out, all the way. It's hard to lose. But
I want to break it down even more than that. So I'm going to give you the exact things that I think bodybuilding is. So you got, first of all, conditioning, which is your leanness. Like, And this comes in hand with how dry you look and how conditioned you are and how hard you look, how deep your muscle cuts are. That's pretty much conditioning, right? And then you've also got to fill out you have to fill out your muscles. You have to look full in those muscles. You can't look flat and stringy. You got to kind of look full. You got to have the hardness. You have to have the dryness. That's pretty much conditioning and leanness. Then you've got proportions, which is like, is your arms overpowering your shoulders? Do you have balanced shoulders and arms? Do you have a good chest? Do you have a good back? Do you have you have amazing quads, but do you also have the hamstring dip or the hamstring drop, or do you have peeled glutes, And then you've also got obviously with that, is it symmetrical? Is it equal from your left to your right? Then you've also got your posing. How good are you at holding your poses? We've seen federations where they mark you. If you can't hold a pose, they're gonna mark you on that. You have to make it look like you're tense and hard, but making it look easy, because that shows posing conditioning.
Yeah.
And then you've also got to hit your poses for your physique. You can adjust, the way you twist to make your waist look smaller. You got to breathe out the air. Got to show your abs on. You got to keep everything nice and tight. And that's pretty much like the majority of what bodybuilding is, right? It's you kind of have to have all of that, and it's a lot already. Like I could already list that, and that's a lot of different things that they look at. But it's when you look at it straight out. People can, like, even a normal person who hasn't watched it before could probably determine the winner. Yeah. Unless they're also equally close.
Yes.
Then it's kind of like, okay, now we have to decide on genetics and kind of like maybe like who do I like more?
Yeah, I think it's hard when everyone is equally good, and then like more and more things such as like structure, how someone's genetic muscle looks. Like some people just naturally have like a more bubbly look to their muscles. Some people, it's easier for them to get the cuts in there and the muscles separate nicer, their insertions are nicer, and that becomes something that the judges have to take into consideration when everyone is equally that good in terms of like development, conditioning, and posing. So that gets really hard on a very high professional level, and it also gets very hard on the most amateur level when everyone is not quite there, when no one is hitting the mark, and then the judges will have to make the decision of who they pick as the winner. And sometimes this certain person may have like the best conditioning, but they're lacking everything else, and then someone else may be like the biggest guy and they're just not in condition, and then what will the judges choose then? And either way, there's going to be someone being unhappy with that decision, but at the end of the day, it's because no one came perfect on that day. And so you can't really pick the perfect person when nobody's perfect, and you just have to pick the best on that day. And sometimes it really does come down to, again, it's subjective, and it's like a subjective sport, and it's just up to what the judges feel is the most complete package on the day. And sometimes being complete may just mean you just barely tick the boxes in all the different criterias, and you may not necessarily be the best in that one criteria. So the winner may end up being someone who was not the most conditioned, but they had amazing structure, amazing muscle bellies, they had just enough development, and maybe that's the best that they can do on the day. So that would have to end up being the winner that they pick on that day.
Yeah, and I
think this goes across all federations as well.
Yeah, this goes across all federations and translates into all other divisions, because if you can look at it and understand bodybuilding, you pretty much can understand the other classes, because especially with bodybuilding, if everyone's not in condition, then it's just pretty much who's the biggest, most proportionate guy is going to win. And then like you said, like there could be two guys. One guy is the biggest, most proportioned guy, and another guy is not as proportioned, but he's in condition. Then it's literally a flip of a coin of, okay, who are we going to reward? And then obviously that's when the criteria of being bodybuilding is in there. If you're doing IFBB Pro League, you're going to have muscle. Yeah. Because if they're going to give you a pro card, especially to compete at an Olympia level, you're going to have that size. Yeah. And so they'll be like, okay, we're going to reward size. It's not that we don't want to reward conditioning, it's because this guy has a bit more potential in getting closer to the pro ranks as compared to the other guy maybe. And then we could be completely wrong. Maybe they might reward the most conditioned guy on the day and be like, you know what, no, we got to reward this because he's only just slightly outsized, but his conditioning is so much more better. And so therefore that's the choice of the day. It's not like, oh, they decide to do a 180 and decide to change it and be like, this is the look we're going for now, so we got to make you look like this person, And obviously once you understand that, it translates into all of the divisions. Obviously we've got other divisions such as, classic physique and men's physique, across all the federations, different. Posing's different, size is different, shape is different. If you go and do a IFBB Pro League men's physique, you're probably going to be a classic physique competitor in the natural world. If you are 90 in the IFBB, if you're 90 in the IFBB and you go over to ICN, they might not even place you because they'll be like you're too big. Like you're definitely a classic physique guy or bodybuilder.
Yeah, so maybe you can tell the audiences a little bit more about just criteria for the classic physique and men's physique classes as opposed to bodybuilding.
Classic physique and men's physique is very similar in the sense that it's it's interesting because if we're comparing IFBB Pro League, the guys are just mass monsters, but they want to, on the Olympia level, they want to bring that small waist back again. They don't want those thick waists anymore. They want those small waists, which is generally what they want. But then the ability to build muscle, I think it does go hand in hand with your waist size. I think if you want more muscle, you got to have a stronger torso, a stronger core in some essence. But once again, if you're genetically gifted, you could probably build a ton of muscle on a small waist. But yeah, definitely, when you go to classic physique, it's definitely more about the small waist. It's the aesthetic golden era kind of period. Across all federations, it is the same sort of look that they're going for. Small waist, big shoulders, good muscularity, good conditioning, the same as bodybuilding. And obviously the posing is different across the federations for classic physique. ICN do bodybuilding poses without, obviously do the bodybuilding poses in the men's physique class as compared to IFBB where it's just front and back pose, so it's a bit different there. But this translates over, obviously ICN, when you do classic physique, you definitely still have to have the muscularity and the conditioning of a bodybuilder, but you have to have that small waist. So if you're someone who unluckily genetically have a thicker waist, probably can only do bodybuilding. It's going to be very hard for you to do classic physique, and that's just your genetic structure, unless somehow you get that waist smaller, which is, if it's genetics, you can't really change that. You're just pretty much a destined bodybuilder.
Yeah, I think with every single division, your genetics do play a part in which division you choose to do. I think a lot of times the best bodybuilders, there's obviously outliers, but at the end of the day, most of them, you want to be a little bit on the shorter side, a little bit of that shorter, stockier side. Your muscles look bigger. It's easier for you to fill out your frame. If you want to be a good classic physique competitor, then you want to, again, go for that more streamlined look. So classic physique competitors tend to be a little bit more on the taller side. And then I guess for men's physique might just be people that naturally can build their upper body that much easier than their lower. So I do think that when you do pick a federation, you also have to see what you're kind of genetically kind of born with. Same with the wellness category in particular. I'm really glad they brought that in because again, that goes to the genetics of some girls where they just build their lower body so much easier than their upper. Then they're definitely going to be more suited towards wellness as opposed to bikini. And that is something that they have to be self-aware enough to realize and then obviously pick the right route to go to.
Yeah, and limb length is another thing. As you said, when you are taller, you do have longer limbs, so that's why you can have that more streamlined physique. Same as men's physique. If you're someone that's, I think a lot of people don't know this, but I think Big Ramy is 5'9" or 5'10". Everyone thinks he's 6 foot, and I'm like, the guy's short. Yeah. Chris Bumstead, on the other hand, is definitely tall. 6'1". Yeah. So he is a fairly tall guy, and even 6 foot is considered average height for a lot of people. I think in general population, I'm pretty sure 6 foot is considered just average. So these guys are not tall, but when you are that shredded and have that amount of muscle, you do look a lot bigger in person. And obviously the bodybuilders, the shorter guys are going to generally do better. So you have to choose a class that suits you. If you are tall and have a thick waist, you're going to have a very hard time, and that's just genetics. I hate to break it to you. And don't worry, you can probably prove me wrong. You can probably just build on that physique, and it is possible. I think a lot of people don't see this, but even Brandon Hendrickson, who's a men's physique pro, he was, he's won Olympia I think 3 or 4 times. He has a thick waist, as compared to other men's physique competitors, but he just built his physique up so much. His lats are just massive, his delta capped, and so that gives him that V taper. So it's not you can't, it just means you just have to keep growing in the right areas to make your physique look, oh wait, he has a nice V taper, but realistically he has a pretty thick waist. And this is because I've seen him stand next to one of our men's physique IFBB pros, Viet Dawn. He has a tiny waist. The guy is tall though. But when he stood, amazing structure, amazing physique. He just keeps getting bigger, and I'm just like, this guy is tall. But when he stood next to Brandon, I remember seeing Brandon's waist, and I was like, oh my god, is that his waist compared to Viet's? And I was just like shocked out of my mind. I was like, whoa, his waist is actually pretty thick. And I think people just don't realize that, because when you build that physique up and you see photos, you're, oh, this guy's got a crazy good V table, but his waist is fairly thick, and so it's always something you can only do what you can, and you got to pick the right division for you and just keep growing into it if that is your goal. And like you said, wellness is one of those divisions that females just generally, like, if they are born with just bigger hip to waist ratio, they're gonna have like generally bigger legs. Like, it's very hard for them to do bikini because they're gonna be overpowering. They'll be like, this division isn't for you. So it's lucky that they did bring it in, so then that way genetics does play a role when people want to deny that. Yes, you can try to outwork it, but when it comes down to it, you can't be a basketball player if you're not 6'5" at least. I actually don't know what height it is, so don't ever hold me to that. But you could be 6'5". If you're 5'10", 5'5", I don't think you're gonna be. It's going to be really hard to make it as a basketball player, and I'm not saying it's impossible, because I think someone did tell me that there was a 5'5" basketball player that was really, really good, but it was just one in like how many people actually try to be one.
You can be the exception to the rule, but at the end of the day, there's very little exceptions to the rules. Correct.
And so, after talking about like, the men's physique, class physique, and the bodybuilding, that's pretty much the main men's divisions, then you've now got like a whole bunch of classes, especially in the female category, and obviously bikini is probably the hardest one to judge, but once you understand the concepts we just discussed, it does apply to bikini as well. Yeah. So with bikini, obviously with that look, you're looking for that good flow between upper and lower. You've got to have glutes. Definitely one of those things, from your side to back shots. You got to have full glutes. You've got to have legs to some extent, quads, hamstrings. You've got to have good V taper, small waist, big shoulders. A good back, lats. And would you say arms would be one that could be categorized in this division as well?
You don't want to have absolutely no arms, but it's not as important as the other body parts. I would say for bikini, the most important thing, I would say over everything else, number one is to have that small waist. You have to have a small, conditioned enough waist. Even at like, non-IFBB, so IFBB, obviously everyone has a high level of conditioning, but even in the other federations where they require less conditionings and they don't want that separation in your midsection, you don't want to see your six-pack abs, they still want a small waist. That small waist is number one. And then obviously next, when it comes to muscular development, it will be 100% glutes, and also like the shoulders, again, to give it that X frame. So the X frame is what they're looking for. When you think about a letter X, the first thing you get drawn to in the X is obviously that middle part of the X, which is that smaller part, which is that midsection. You want that small midsection, and then obviously tapering up nicely, and then tapering down nicely to nice full glutes as well.
Yep, super important. And so I guess like, between federations so different. So we can talk about the Pro League, obviously being the best of the best in the world, and the conditioning and the standards super, super high.
Yeah.
Super high. And
I don't think people realize how high it actually is.
It's high because if you are a bikini girl in IFBB and you try to do ICN or YNF or any of the natural federations, and not saying that the IFBB girls are using stuff, a lot of them are natural. I think people get this misconception that doing IFBB, you have to use stuff. And I'm like, no, you do not have to use stuff. If you want to, it's up to you. You and your coach can decide that, but we don't think it's necessary at all. It just takes time. And so when you're doing IFBB, you have to definitely be way more conditioned. The girls in IFBB would be marked down in other federations if they went to across between federations. And they would probably have to do like fitness or sports model in like ICN because the condition is on par with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so then you got other classes as well. You've got the other federations like YNF and stuff like that. And I think what's important, or what we're trying to get to is, or when we're going back to the question we get asked a lot is like, or people get mad at like, oh, this is the look they're going for. Or this is the look they decided. We have to bring girls in like this condition now. And I'm like, it's not a condition. Yes, it is a conditioning game, but if you're the best on the day in proportion, flow, posing, look, like, you know, either the whole entire look, bikini even, these are all the little things that get considered as a bigger picture. You know, I think a lot of people think it's just, oh, she's conditioned, so they're choosing conditioned girls now, so now we gotta bring in my girl's condition. And I'm like, well, if your client doesn't have the muscularity to get conditioned, they're just gonna look skinny on stage.
Yeah. I think like sometimes, I think to me personally, I think conditioning is very important to get the conditioning right. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't actually nail it correctly. And sometimes it comes down to the athlete and their genetics when it comes to where they hold body fat. So sometimes this gets overlooked a lot, but I believe a truly balanced physique, you have to have even fat distribution everywhere, which means that it's not enough for you to just be conditioned through your midsection. It should be also judged on, you know, obviously the most important part, which is like the legs of females. Like they need to be equally conditioned as well. And sometimes I think that's one of the parts that gets overlooked a lot in certain bikini divisions. More so the natural ones, because they require a lower level of conditioning. And so sometimes they do overlook the importance of, again, someone having even fat distribution all through their body.
Yes, yeah. And so as you said, like, you know, you could be lean up. What Nicole is obviously saying is like you could be lean in the upper body, like, you know, you could have striations in your shoulders and then your lower body's not in condition. And so that's something that could be marked on, because they're like, well, it's not evenly distributed, so we're going to mark you on that. And so that being said, if you're the most conditioned girl on stage and everyone else is not in condition, you could get marked down because standing next to everyone, you're too conditioned. And they could mark you for that. But then unless you're like a clear standout winner and you're exactly what the criteria is, they're going to give you that win.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on like which areas you hold your extreme body fat. So like, again, Jeremy mentioned striations, and on paper across all federations, they don't want bikini girls to have striated shoulders. But at the end of the day, especially on the high level, I just hate to break it to you, but we all have striations through our shoulders. Like if you see any, even amateur, not just pros, a lot of amateurs in the IFBB Pro League, they have striations through their shoulders. But these are the things the judges don't want standing out too much on stage. And so sometimes it does come down to genetics, where someone can still look very nice and round, and they have that pretty feminine muscle is what I like to call it. And so they don't look too hard and dry. And even though, yes, maybe they do have some striations through their shoulders, but you know, they're very beautifully conditioned everywhere else, and they maybe don't have the cuts through their legs and their glutes, and so they can kind of get away with it because they definitely don't want to see striated quads and striated glutes. And sometimes some people do push it that far, and sometimes unfortunately some people do have to push it that far. Say for example, if their midsection is the last part of their body to lose body fat and someone's shoulders are already striating, the coach has to make a call as to like, I do need my competitor to come in a little bit leaner because their midsection is just not there yet. The midsection is still holding a lot of fat, and we need to get that body weight down, even though their upper body is already like super, super lean. And so sometimes, again, that genetics does play a factor in that. And sometimes it's not exactly the coach's fault for pushing someone to be too lean. It's just a call that they have to make, whether they bring in their athlete less conditioned than they know that they can be, so that they still fit the criteria and not get marked down, or they push it a little bit further in order to, you know, get the body fat off certain areas and then try to fill it back out. There's a lot of different things that a coach can choose to do, and sometimes they don't know whether it's going to pay off until show day and until they know who their athlete's standing next to as well.
Yeah, so that it just comes down to research. It comes down to looking at the federation, what the previous winners were like, and making those comparisons. I think, you know, it's you know, that being said, like, you know, muscularity is one of those things. And so if someone just started competing, their bikini competitor, and they don't have the muscle, getting them lean might not be the best goal.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they might not necessarily hold the muscle or fullness that is kind of makes them look good, you know. And so they might have to be less conditioned, and sometimes that's rewarded. But then sometimes, if someone can get conditioned and they have the muscularity, they're probably going to do pretty well because they have both. They have the shape, they have the X-frame, they have the posing, they have everything right. And that's super important. So that's why you should, as a coach, we should never, decide like, oh, this is like, this is the look they're going for now. I don't really say that. I'll kind of be like, well, she was the best on the day. So that's if you can bring something similar to that, you're probably going to win. Like, because that means that's the standard. Like, that's a high standard, and the federation can have different level of athletes, and it's just a fine-tuning, balancing game and just hoping for the best about who you stand next to.
Yeah, I think rather than trying to think about what the judges want, the most important thing as an athlete and as a coach is to you as an athlete come in as the best version of yourself that looks the best, and again as a coach to bring in your athlete to the best version that they can. Sometimes on certain people that means not being as conditioned, whereas for some other athletes they look better even more conditioned, and this is 100% true on the elite pro level as well on the IFBB, especially in the Olympia. Some girls, like the judges, especially like we'll take Laura Lee as an example. She's came in super shredded before, and the judges didn't really like that. And then so for her, she has to come in a little bit fuller, and she won't be the leanest, but that's what the judges like on her, as opposed to say someone like Ash K. And her coach Adam does talk about it. She's done a lot of shows, and they've tried a lot of different looks that she can come in fuller and not as crispy, but then they reckon she doesn't look as good that way. Like, she looks better coming in a little bit leaner. For myself, I'm still trying to kind of find that balance. I think each year it changes as well. When I was much less muscular than I am now, the only way for me to look good is for me to be really lean. And so from the very beginning of my career, I always brought conditioning because I didn't have size. And so that's something that people want to consider. So in order to look conditioned on stage, which is a criteria, because sometimes people say that a certain athlete needs to be more conditioned, but it doesn't mean they need to lose more weight. Sometimes having more conditioning just also means just having more muscle to fat ratio. So you might have already brought your body fat down to like a point where it's like you only have 10 kilos of fat in your whole body, but you literally only have like just 20 kilos of like muscle. So you're still gonna not look as conditioned as someone who maybe is holding a little bit more fat, but they have so much more muscle. They're just going to look more conditioned. And so sometimes that has to be tailored within a person, and a coach just has to know when to stop pushing the scale weight down and to stop pushing the body fat down if we just come to a point where that is the best look for that athlete because they just don't have enough years of development. Then maybe pushing that extra conditioning is not where we want to go for. I think a very good example of this is like our athlete Tung. Obviously now he is the biggest and the leanest he's ever been. However, like his weight is a little bit lighter than prior. Yeah. So, and it doesn't mean that like, in the past, like he wasn't lean enough, but it's just like, he just has to be brought in, the way that is required. And, maybe in a few years back when he didn't have as much muscle, if we pushed him for even more conditioning, he would just look way too skinny and like just do even worse. So it's very different every single year, even with the same athlete. And this is something that everyone has to consider. And this is why this game is so hard, but also so fulfilling, because there's so many things to consider. But at the end of the day, it's just best to just focus on yourself and have a realistic eye as to how you think you look best. Now that I feel like I have put on a little bit more muscle, maybe I don't need to be as conditioned as I did in the past in order to look good. So this is something, again, that keeps changing, and it will change every time. And all I can do is come in the best that I think I should, rock up to the show, see what the judges say, and then use that feedback and keep going from there.
Yeah, and I want to touch on, obviously, as you said, the realistic eye. It's a good way to put it. I think as a client, as a competitor, you need to be realistic with yourself. If you can't look at it, that girl, they chose that look. No, they chose that look because she had more muscle than you. She had possibly better proportions than you. She probably came in a bit more conditioned than you. She probably, had better posing than you. It can be anything, right? And so it's something, they had evenly distributed body fat maybe. So there's so many things that can be looked at. Like, as a competitor, that's something you have to be honest with yourself. And that's something you communicate with your coach. For me, I'll talk to my clients and be like, I'm going to focus on like being slightly less conditioned because I want to bring that fullness. Because right now, if we get more conditioned, you're going to look skinnier, and you're not going to have muscle. So therefore, unless that's the look, you know that, okay, I know I brought my best, I got to the best conditioning that I could, and I'm going to jump on stage. But obviously, IB is a bit more, I think, you can kind of predict to some extent, obviously on the amateur level. It is a lot harder because I think they are slowly deviating a little bit in regards to comparing to the Olympia level athletes. And that's something that probably needs to be worked on, I think, in the future. I can't say for certain. Maybe that was the best look on the day. I didn't get a chance to watch any of it, so I have no idea, but I just hear from what people say. But it's one of those things that, those people who are best on the day was according to what the judges say, and that's the look they like, so be it. Whereas the other federations, it's a bit more all over the place, because obviously the level of athletes are different in each federation. And so if someone rocks up, in an ideal world, if someone rocks up like as a female bikini competitor, if they rocked up with, let's say, the perfect X-frame, perfect conditioning from upper and lower, not too hard, not too soft, they've got the posing down packed perfectly, they've got enough muscularity, they filled out just right, they have a big smile, I don't know, I'm just throwing that in there, and they have that flair, and that's pretty much gonna win. Like that should win you most of your classes. The only thing they could say is like, you're too big for the division. Like if you actually have too much muscle, but if you brought all of that perfectly, then you're gonna win. Like it's as simple as it gets. Like if you're the most proportioned bikini competitor, you're most likely gonna win, right?
Yeah. However, I would like to say that I haven't actually, after watching a lot of shows, no one has presented that perfect physique, and that is why
if they do, they win.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hands down. Like, there's no denying it. Like, you just have to be realistic as a competitor and be like, no, that girl has more muscle than me. No, that girl has better conditioning than me. No, that girl has better posing than me. Then that's it. Like, you can self-reflect and be like, wait a second, I need to improve these now, instead of, oh no, that they chose this look now.
Yeah.
Like, because they did not choose that look. That look was, we just went through this whole podcast talking about muscularity, and let's say ideal world, a girl rock up like that. If I ask any of the listeners now, I'm sure you're going to say, yeah, that girl would win.
Yeah.
Like, there's no denying it. So, obviously, like, as you said, in the amateur ranks, in the different federations, you don't see that as often. And sometimes you do. Yeah. Sometimes you see a guy who comes up nowhere, he's the most conditioned on stage, he won. Like, he won, he's got the proportion. Okay, yep, he's got it. He's got it in the bag. Yeah. There's no denying him first place. He's going to get it. And the judges are probably going to see it that way as well. They're like, he's the criteria, perfect. He's number one. And then second, third, fourth can be just discrepancies between the judges and be like, oh, we like this more than the other.
And I'm not afraid to say that, like, I have disagreed a lot with a lot of, especially all the natural federations judging. I have disagreed with their calls, but I understand what kind of led them to that. And at the end of the day, it came down to nobody was perfect. So, like, how can you really pick a proper winner when, like, everyone has their flaws? And it comes down personally to what flaw do you think is bigger? And then that just comes down to, like, each person, For me, like I said, I'm a big one on, how someone's kind of skin tightness looks. I feel like even if someone held a little bit more body fat, I think it's important to look at the amount of, like, jiggle through someone's body fat, how well someone holds their body fat on their frame. Some people hold body fat really well, and that body fat just, like, if their body fat's just held just exactly on their glute area, but, like, their midsection's still tight and it's just, like, just that perfect blend, then, obviously that's fine. However, sometimes, it doesn't always end up that way. But at the end of the day, as much as we want to argue with, our point across with regards to why we feel our competitors should have won, like, I'm always going to back my clients. Like, a lot of times I am their coach, and I always see, all their strengths and every reason why I think, they should have placed higher or done better. But at the end of the day, I also know that they're not perfect. And if they were to maybe win that day, that other people would also have things to say for other reasons as to why my client shouldn't have won. So everyone's always going to have something to say about who ended up placing higher than the other person on the day. But what we can do, and what we can all do as coaches, rather than arguing with each other or arguing with the judges, is to just help our athlete become that perfect person and just be so undeniable that there will be no if, ands or buts, or like any kind of arguments this way or that way. So again, for an example, like my client coming third, I know, things that she personally has to work on. However, I also can argue so many factors as why I think there's areas of her that does beat the girls that play second or first. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that like whoever won first place has things to work on. Whoever won second also has things to work on. And my client coming third also have things to work on. So let's just come out of the show continuing to work on those things so that one day someone will bring that perfect, undeniable package, and there would just be a clear winner.
Yeah, no, exactly it. Like, it's all about being transparent and understanding, reflecting, like, as a coach and a client, that, oh no, we need to work on this area. And we can do all the, arguments in the world, but it's not going to change anything. Understand that the judge's job is to, spend a whole day judging physiques. Whether that be 15 girls in a bikini class, it's a very hard job.
It's definitely a hard job.
To pick your top 3 and top 5. If you have 5 of them that are really good, and you've got like ICM, which places top 5, and you got YNF that does 3, top 3, same as IFBB. So they just go 1, 2, 3. It's as simple as it gets, or even like top 5, and they just do a numbers game of like what they like more. And everyone has a different eye, and obviously you gotta understand that there are going to be mistakes. I generally think, like, as a judge, they can't be perfect all the time. You might miss something, you might miss a detail, and you might not place as well as you'd liked in the state show, and then go to nationals and place even better, and then just like, because you just get seen more, like they just looked at you more, they might know you and be like, oh, I don't really like that look, so I'm not going to place that at all. And so don't feel disheartened ever when like you don't get the placing you want, but just know that you're gonna have flaws. Like, you're not a perfect athlete yet, unless you are. If you're a textbook perfect athlete, you're gonna win, hands down. We've seen it in some people that just like, yeah, that guy's gonna win, or that person's gonna win, because they've just got all the qualities that is already there, and you kind of like, this is exactly what they want, and that's what you can bank on, right?
To be a perfect winner, you gotta be that person that's just backstage pumping up, and immediately everyone's like, oh, that person's going to win. Or just step out on stage before hitting your pose.
I will argue against that, only because bikini girls don't look at until they pose. When they, like, I cannot deny that when a girl's pumping up backstage, and then once they hit a pose, then you're like, oh shit, yeah, actually no, they have muscle. But in bodybuilders, you can tell a little bit more obvious. Like, class physique guys, you can see it like backstage, like, fuck, that guy's hell condition. I do find bikini a bit harder backstage to kind of tell. I'm like looking at them back, oh, they don't look like, they might not look that good. And then once they hit a pose, you're like, oh, wait a second, no, actually their shape's pretty good. That's if you're watching them. Yeah. But if they're pumping up backstage, I'm not gonna lie, it's not as easy to determine who's gonna be the winner until everyone's up on stage, and then you start to see their flaws, or you start to see their strengths, and you're kind of like, no, that girl's perfect. Like, that girl's gonna be hard to beat.
Unfortunately, with the more like, the beginner federations, that's not IFBB, it is something that people have to consider, that like, yeah, you are standing on stage with a bunch of other people. Unfortunately, sometimes for some people, it may be a disadvantage to them if they were to show up that day being the only person that was like muscular enough and lean. Sometimes you can stand out so good in the bad way. Unfortunately, sometimes the way people look next to you can make you look like too much, and it has happened before, and that's not a bad thing, and it's not something that you should be sad or upset about, but it is the reality of the sport that you are judged not by yourself standing up there, but how you look next to everyone else. So sometimes someone can stand alone and just look absolutely perfect until they stand next to a bunch of other people, and then they might just maybe look a little bit out of place or too much sometimes, and that can also be a reason why someone will probably not place as well as someone else. So
it even happens even in IFBB. Like we can't deny that. And I think, you know, bikini is definitely one of the divisions that you have to be the in-between girl. I call it the in-between of everyone. You can't be the most conditioned. You can't be the most hardest. You can't be not the leanest. You have to be just in the middle of like, okay, if I'm looking at it, I'm going to choose that as the winner, you know, because that's how the judges will probably look at it. Like, who's the girl in between? Obviously, it should be a bit more. I honestly think it should definitely, like, you know, if you have the pro ranks, it should just be like, who is a pro? Full stop. It shouldn't be a case of who is in between everyone. It should be like, no, this is the quality. If the girl is the condition and she suits being a pro, then she needs to win that pro card. But obviously there's all discrepancies and, you know, in this judging, and I think that's where the direction of bodybuilding is kind of going on the amateur ranks. If the judges can focus on just who's a pro, like who can stand on a pro stage tomorrow, that is your goal. If you can stand on a pro stage tomorrow, you're pretty much going to be a pro. You know, and I think the judges need to do that more often. I'm not saying they don't, and I hope they do. And I think it's one of those things that if I was a judge, that would be what I'll look at. Like, if you're the most conditioned on stage, but you look like a pro, then I'm like, I'm giving it to that girl. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, no, she's the most conditioned, so I'm going to choose the slightly softer girl. Just only maybe slightly softer and be like, oh, that's the look we're going for.
I definitely don't think any of the judges think that way for IFBB.
So you think they don't think in between, they think...
Oh, they're not going to be like, I'm just going to purposely pick the second most conditioned girl. I don't think that's like their mind...
That's what they're not looking at.
Yeah. They're not purposely like, oh, but with this, I'm just going to go for the second best. Like,
no, not second best, but they intuitively choose that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, actually, we like this look. And, you know, that being said, it could be a lot of variables in regards to maybe that girl who's more conditioned might have a thicker waist.
Yeah, exactly.
And the girl who is less conditioned has a smaller waist.
Yeah.
And then that could be the deciding factor. So like I said, you know, it's not exactly, you know, black and white in judging.
It's never black and white.
It's never black and white. Exactly.
And it's never anyone's fault. That's what something people need to remember as well. Like, it's just sometimes... At the end of the day, it is a little bit of luck as well, you know? So people just have to kind of bear that in mind and, like, walk away from each one knowing that, like, as good as you are or as good as you think you're better than someone else is not enough. Sometimes you need to be the best version. And so if you still have certain flaws and things to work on, then, you know, it's natural that, like, you may not get placed the way that you thought you should have, because maybe someone saw your small little flaw as something that was, like, bigger than the flaw of someone else's, because everyone has different flaws, and it's really up to the individual, like, judge to pick which flaw is the biggest flaw. So the only way to guarantee is to make sure you have absolutely no flaws and you fit the criteria perfectly and you have brought the best package that you possibly can.
And that's all bodybuilding is. If you want to excel in the sport, you've got to see the big picture. It's just a stepping stone. Like, this is all just a stepping stone to where you want to be. And don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare to people who just first time compete and just win their pro card straight away. Like, you know, other people are going to have harder than other people, and just know that if you do win, be proud of that. You know, you've already taken that first step and you've done well. And remember, you beat probably so many other people in the federation or class or whatever class you do, and that should be in the feat in itself. Like, that's just a stepping stone. I think everyone wants to wait for that perfect time to compete, or, you know, I want to win only if I'm going to jump on stage, and that's fine to have that attitude, but just know that you won't know until you stand next to everyone else.
Nothing is guaranteed until you're on that stage.
And you're peeled, or you're exactly where you need to be, brain dead or brain fog, or just have low energy all the time. You know, these are all things that happens over time, and, you know, it's an experience to have, especially when competing, and that's the joy of it, right? It's like the champion mindset honestly is, I've done everything I did. Like, with what my coach wanted me to do, I did everything perfectly. I listened to it. I did the best to my ability. I built that quality in my nutrition, my training, my sleep, my stress. I managed everything. And then you should be happy no matter the outcome, you know, and it's going to hurt sometimes. And that's part of what growth is and what strength truly is. Like, having real strength comes from failure. And I think it's something we all need to embrace, and it's something that you don't want to have an easy road. And sometimes we all want that easy road though. I think, with social media and everything like that, we want to have just make it, all of a sudden just win everything. And it's just not going to be like that most times. For the majority of us, for 95% of us, it's going to be a hard road.
It was 100% a hard road for me.
Yes, as everyone knows Nicole's story, it was a very hard road to get there. And, she placed 5th in the first INBA show back in the day, and you've done 11 shows before you turn pro. Everyone's just gone through their one show. Even our coach Tung, he's our athlete, but he's also only been through 5 shows to date. I've done 9 shows myself, still not a pro, so what? And I think it's one of those things that stop following, try to think, sometimes it's going to be harder. It's going to be 95% of us, it's going to be the harder road.
And most of the, I'm not going to say all, because there's a lot of people that has just gone on a full winning streak and just keep on winning. And again, that comes down to just having the perfect genetics sometimes. There's, again, very rare, but again, like Floyd Mayweather, I correct me if I'm wrong, but he's never lost a fight.
I don't think he has.
Yeah. So there is some people that never have to go through failure, but at the end of the day, a lot of people who are at the top of their game in their sport, they have lost more times than they have won. At the end of the day now, even though I'm an IBB pro, I have definitely lost more amateur shows than I've won. I won 3 first places and then the overall, but I've done 11 shows, so I've lost way more times than I've won. And at the end of the day, it's going to be like that. And you can take each show, each placing as a lesson and as fuel to use as to how to improve, because even if you win your pro card straight away, you're going to have a big battle ahead of you. So you're always going to have that improvement mindset, and coming out of each show,
growth mindset.
Whether you're second or third, just knowing that, even if I won, I still have to work on my weaknesses. So now that I've came third, I'm still going to work on my weaknesses. So why should I let my placing change anything at all? Because no matter what you place, you're still going to have to work on your weaknesses. And there's going to be other people out there that are going to be probably better, or just more better in different areas, more gifted, or whatever it may be. The only thing you can do is to keep improving yourself. And so if anyone has, again, competed this past season and maybe didn't place the way that you wanted to place, just know that even if you won, or even if you came third, even if you came 5th, your weaknesses are still your weaknesses, and you're going to have to still work on it. So why not use this as fuel and motivation to get working on those weaknesses now?
Exactly. You've got to accept and face the truth, the hard truth and the harsh reality of what competing is actually like for the 95% of you out there. And there's probably 5% who's just a bunch of winners. It's a journey in itself, and it's one of those things. Always remember, as a coach, our job, when genetics is the foundation. I truly believe this. When I say this analogy, it's good that I use a cake analogy. So once again, a new analogy I created. But the cake analogy, what I mean by this is, you have a cake, right? So the foundational cake, which is the batter and the actual cake itself, that is the foundation. That is your genetics, that is your lifestyle, that is your mindset. If you have a great lifestyle, a very relaxed lifestyle, stress-free lifestyle, you don't work FIFO, you don't do graveyard hours, you work a normal 8 to 5 job that's not too stressful, you're a pretty chilled person, and you've also got the right mindset. You've got to have a chilled attitude, relaxed mindset, you've got a growth mindset, this is a stepping stone for me. You truly believe that you're going to succeed at some point. And then you've got to have genetics. The harsh truth is, yes, you've got to have genetics as well to really elevate your progress and really take you to that next level. I'm not saying that you can't do it without genetics, but these are the 3 things that you kind of need, which is the foundation. Once those are in place, a coach comes in, we add the icing between the cake. We give you some structure, we give you some education, we give you some programs, some training programs, some nutrition plans. How you execute those are up to you. It's your quality. How hard do you train? How well do you eat your meals? Do you like being flexible? Do you like just, no, I'm going to eat this perfectly to the gram?
Are you drinking 12 Pepsi Maxes a day, not
Yes.
telling your coach?
Yes.
Are you chewing gum 3 times a day, non-stop?
Yes. Are you doing all the things right? Are you resting when you need to, you know? Are you listening to the plan and not doing more than what is required? That's the icing between the cake that holds our foundation. And then what we do when peak week comes around is just add some sprinkles on top, you know? We might drop a little bit of water. We might add some fun stuff, but like that's pretty much it. We add some sprinkles on top, you know, we make the physique look pretty, you know, we got the posing on point, you know, are you doing all of that?
Put it on a nice plate.
And then we put on a nice plate, and then we show it to the judges, and it's up to the judges on which cake they like more.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you know, everyone likes different cake.
Yeah.
So you know, they might not like you know, tiramisu. Well, the tiramisu is not a cake, right? a forest cake or ice cream cake, whatever it is. You know, everyone has different likes they like, and so it's one of those things that you have to understand that, you know, there's so many things that come into play when competing, and you know, it's a journey in itself, it's a learning process in itself, and I guarantee that you're gonna learn a lot from your first show, your second show, your third show, and you just keep learning. You know, like, how could I have done my off season better? There's so much more to it than just, okay, yeah, I'm not made for this. You know, keep going, keep trying, because if this is the lifestyle you want to live, then you just you'll eventually get there at some point.
Just remember, there's a lot of people that were like born with the perfect structure and genetics, but
lifestyle and mindset.
Yeah, there's so many things that go into it, and so, like, you know, again, sometimes when people are the most gifted with certain things, but they don't have that, maybe that grit, that passion, that fire in them, then they just don't step on stage at all. And so, you know, again, just remember the fact that you've made it through the comp prep and you're standing up there. There's a lot of people that just didn't have it in them to.
They didn't make it.
They didn't make it. So you made it. You stepped on stage.
The amount of times I have clients, like, I list it, and I'm like, by the time show comes around, like 12, 13 weeks out, life hits you hard.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then you realize things happen, and it's not their fault that they can't compete anymore. So making it to the stage is a feat in itself. And I know it sounds corny, and, you know, people are like, oh, that's just very, like, positive, like, I'm a killer, I'm going to destroy. And I'm like, but that's the truth, though. A lot of people don't make it to the stage.
You have to be in the ring to fight.
Yes, exactly. If you don't make it to the ring, you have no fight.
Yeah, there's no fight to be had. It doesn't matter, like, how good you say you are and you can be. You didn't make it to the ring. You're not in the fight. Stand
proud, stand tall in what you achieved, and no matter the result, as coaches, we you know, us being coaches, we're happy that our clients made it.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, we want our clients to win, but no one can take away your hard work if you put in the work. If you know deep down what you put in. If you feel like it could have been done better, and, you know, I've had clients in the past who said, oh, I could have done that better, then do it better next time.
Yeah.
That's it. It's as simple as it gets, because, you know, we aren't there with you 24/7 a day, so we don't know exactly what's happening. And be a great client and be transparent and talk to your coaches, ask questions, and make sure that, you know, you really open up and try to learn from it, because we're here to guide you as best we can. But if you don't say anything, we're just going to assume everything's perfect and just keep grinding, but keep pushing and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that was a very good podcast, I think. Hopefully it has motivated you to really keep going and keep going on the journey that you're on, to stand tall, stand proud, and be proud of what you achieved. Because no matter what result you got, I'm sure that if you keep going, you're going to be rewarded. Mm-hmm. Success is not just up and up, linear, exponential growth, and just like keep winning. It's going to be a case, it's going to be hard. You could compete this season and lose, and next season you're going to dominate.
Yeah.
And then it could be the opposite way around. You could dominate this season, next season you stand up next to even better competitors, and then you're just like, shit, I'm back to the drawing board. But the number one thing is your mindset. Make sure that you focus on growth, and as long as you keep improving between shows, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And it's going to be better. And that's pretty much what life is. Like, you don't just show up all of a sudden, do an exam and do well if you didn't put in the work before. You know you could have done better. Oh, I could have studied more. I could have trained harder. I could have done my off season better. You know, if you don't go into the comps with regret, just know that, just keep putting in the work, and I guarantee you'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, if you enjoyed our podcast today, and if you do have any further questions, feel free to send us a message, or make sure to tag and share with your friends and forward it to your family and friends or anyone out there that you just want to motivate. Once again, if you did enjoy this podcast, please share it with
everyone.
And that's myself and Nicole signing out.
Bye. How long was that?